guys, it's Jane. Welcome back to Mystery Monday. Today I have a review for you of Ordinary Grace by William Kent Krueger. This won a whole bunch of major crime fiction awards in 2014, and now having read the book, I know why, because this one is something a little bit special. William Kent Krueger is better known for the Cork O'Connor mystery series. They're set in the Minnesota woods and they centre around Cork O'Connor, who is a one-time Chicago cop and the former sheriff of the region that it's set in. The books are mystery suspense type things. But this is not one of them. Ordinary Grace is not part of the series. It is a standalone. It's also set in Minnesota though, although it's not in the present day. It's set in the past. It's all about one summer in 1961, and it's told from the eyes of Frank, who at the time was a 13-year-old boy. He's telling it looking back. So it's 40 years ago that the events of the story occurred, and we have moments at the beginning and the end and a couple of times throughout where he steps back and you get the older voice of Frank reflecting on these events. But almost all of the story is about what happened this one summer. So even though Frank is our narrator and so therefore kind of our central character, he's not really the heart of the story. Probably it's his father who is the heart of the story. Frank's father is a Methodist minister, married with 3 children. As a young man, he was an up-and-coming lawyer and a bit of a leading light, and he attracted a bright, glittering, artistic and glamorous wife. And then he went away to war and came back quite a different man. The theme of war veterans and what life is like on the other side of war is something which comes up again and again in the story. It's not just Frank's father. There is a whole range of characters in this story who are war veterans. And that's probably one of the big themes that is worked through in the story. Frank's mum did not sign up for the life of a minister's wife and is perhaps not the best possible fit for that role. The marriage that these two have is quite a complicated and not entirely happy one. They have 3 kids, a girl who is just finished high school and has a scholarship to attend Juilliard. She's a deeply talented musician and a beautiful girl seeming to lead a charmed life, and everybody loves her. Then there's Frank, who is growing up wild, doesn't really understand himself and his place in the world, and his younger brother, who suffers from a socially debilitating stutter, and as a result is basically Frank's shadow when they're out in public because he doesn't want to talk himself. At the beginning of the book, Frank tells us that death visited New Bremen, the small town in Minnesota that they were living in, 5 times that summer in the guises of accident, natural causes, suicide, and also murder. Because it's summer and because Frank's dad is the minister, Frank has a lot more to do with the funerals and the processes of death in the town than you might otherwise expect an average 13-year-old boy would. He knows the undertaker by name. And in fact, the town gravedigger is an old war buddy of his dad's, who's a really broken individual and who lives in the church basement by the grace of Frank's dad looking after him and letting him have a place there. The murder is the central motivating factor of the story, and yet it doesn't actually happen until halfway through the book. And because of that, and the fact that we get to know the person who dies, who was murdered, really well in the first half of the book, makes this much more emotionally affecting than most murder mysteries. And really, it doesn't really read like a murder mystery at all, even though it structurally it kind of is. There is a murder, and the second half of the book is really all about finding out who did it and understanding the events. but it's not a whodunit in any other way. It doesn't read like that. You don't get the kind of cathartic, I know I've caught you, you're off to prison, it's fixed. That is not at all what this story is about. It's really about living through tragedy and finding some measure of peace on the other side. This is a book that is going to make you cry. Getting to know the murder victim as well as we do, and then seeing the fallout on the family afterwards is just absolutely gutting. And yet, this is not a depressing book. The overarching message of the book is the possibility of life after tragedy. And that comes through with the war veterans and their struggles, and also with the families of the people who have died, and most specifically Frank's family, which nearly falls apart in the wake of tragedy, but then doesn't. And the conclusion of the book is actually really life-affirming and uplifting. So this is a book which is a real emotional roller coaster. It's beautifully written, and by virtue of the 40-year-long retrospectograph that the narrator has to look on the events, it actually deals very kindly with the characters involved, even those who aren't truly good guys. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind a sad story, this is a really beautifully written meditation on the reality of life in a fallen world and the possibility of hope beyond tragedy, and I highly recommend it. That's it for me today. I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.